We've all experienced moments where we've lost our cool, whether we lost it physically or even verbally. It happens, we're human. In light of what Will Smith did to Chris Rock, we're going to go over techniques to keep our cool and what Will could have done differently to still protect his family and remain professional all simultaneously. Because I don't believe in wasting anyone's time, we've got timestamps and chapters in the video if you just want to skip ahead, all right, let's get into it. So first, what happened? Well, at the Oscars, Chris Rock made a G.I. Jane joke about Jada because Jada had a bald hairstyle. You may or may not know that Jada has opened up about suffering from alopecia. Will initially laughed, and the next thing you know, Will is walking toward the stage and slapped Chris Rock in an effort to protect his family, to show that he's not a coward.
You know who's got the hardest job tonight? Javier Bardem and his wife are both nominated. Now, if she loses, he can't win. He is praying that Will Smith wins. Like, please, Lord. Jada, I love you. G.I. Jane 2, can't wait to see it. All right? That was a nice one. Okay. I'm out here. Richard. Oh, wow. Wow. Will Smith just smacked the shit out of me.
Keep my wife's name out your fucking mouth.
Wow, dude.
Yes.
It was a G.I. Jane joke.
Keep my wife's name out your fucking mouth.
I'm going to, okay? Okay. That was a greatest night in the history of television. Okay. Okay.
You know, so now there's history and other information that we could get into as to why that all transpired. But what we're going to focus on are the tools that this book that I read, How to Keep Your Cool, an Ancient Guide to Anger Management, teaches us about how we can manage our angry emotions and what I personally would have done differently. So in short, the book is a Latin work. It's an essay by Seneca that he framed as a letter to his older brother on how to prevent and control anger. Its methods are therapeutic and it's based in the context of Stoic philosophy. The book opens by giving some background information on Seneca and his political journey, and many thought that Seneca wrote this book for elite Romans. And today, because his work is so relevant in today's age as it was back then in the mid-40s AD, it's now being honored as a timeless piece for all people and at all times. Before we can talk about remedies, we've got to talk about how dangerous anger can be and really recognize that. Why do we get angry? Well, we get angry if we feel we've been harmed or if we feel we've been harmed unjustly. So Seneca's brother urged him to write about ways to soften anger because he himself realized that anger is the single emotion we should be frightened of because it's the ugliest and most savage of all of the emotions that we feel. He talks about how it rages in turmoil and seeks pain, weapons, blood, and torture until it harms others, how it rushes to arms and greedily seeks a vengeance that will only drag the avenger down with it. You see, in this example of what happened between Will Smith and Chris Rock, Will got so angry that he responded emotionally out of anger, and in an effort to bring Chris down, his response brought himself down as well. Something else that anger does, which is, anger is a brief madness, right? You can describe it as that. It can blind you. It'll be deaf to reason and advice, and it'll ignore friendships. Will and Chris are friends. And yet, because Will became angry at the moment for what he was dealing with internally, a friend, colleague of his paid the price. And unfortunately, Will assaulted a man he subconsciously knew wasn't a threat. And that's important because the book suggests we typically get angry at those who we know we can harm or those who don't pose a threat to us, which makes sense. Anger is an emotion that can knock us off course. it'll take complete control of you. And the return to a healthy and safe mindset is difficult because there really isn't any space left for reason once passion enters the chat, you know? Like anger will decide whatever it wants to do, and at that moment, you'll have no say. Now, obviously we're human. If something is done wrong, then of course you might ask, wouldn't we get angry? The key is to react with reason, and once you've factored all of the different aspects of your next move, then you can act, and not to react without forethought. The book states 2 remedies to avoid making mistakes out of anger. Option 1, simply just don't fall into an angry state, right? Easy enough, right? Yeah, right. The second one is, if you're unable to help it and you just end up in that angry state, then don't do anything wrong and work towards freeing yourself from that anger feeling. Similar to how we view remedying the physical body, right? Some therapies deal with maintaining health and others deal with restoring it. So one method is to fend off anger and the other one is to suppress it. So how do we work towards achieving the 2 recommended remedies? In no particular order, let's start with the first one, which is having zen-like nightly reviews of our own ethical choices. Understand that no one should think they're safe from anger because nature summons even the gentle and peaceful people into cruelty and violence. Look at Will Smith. You know what I'm saying? You know, we're human. It's important to take time every night or at some point in your day to think about how you can improve to become a better human the next day and the next day and onward. The second thing is, don't make your first move right away. The book suggests that delay is the greatest remedy for anger. It allows you to exercise judgment, even against what seems overt and plain, because false things give the appearance of truth at times. Back to the Will and Chris Rock example, Chris Rock didn't know about Jada's alopecia, it was reported. He was making a joke about her appearance in that moment and its similarities with the G.I. Jane joke. But the intention wasn't to attack her insecurities, which it may have appeared that way on the surface. So you gotta think about that and really take time to figure out what it is that you're feeling. You know, a day reveals truths, as again, anger can be blind, and any punishment can be imposed on with delay. But once you give a punishment right in that moment, you can't take that back. So give it some time and then act accordingly. Now, the third thing it mentions is watch the company you keep to avoid feeling wronged. So spend time with those who are the calmest, most easygoing, and least anxious and depressed. Since we take on the natures of our associates, of our friends, the mind infects, those closest to us. So watch who we keep around. You know how we begin to develop the language of our friends? They'll say something so much and we start to say it ourselves. Yeah, that happens on a much deeper level. So you want to take that into account when you're thinking about the people who you have around you. The fourth thing is avoid weighty undertakings. If your workload in life becomes too much to bear, you become irritable. If you've taken on so much that pushes you past exhaustion, your mind becomes, employed with difficulties when your mind should be given over to enjoyable arts. This is something I struggle with as I constantly take on more than I can manage, because I truly do believe I can manage it all. And I end up being able to manage it all, but it does come with a sacrifice, which then impacts how irritable I get. It's hard because I'm constantly on this grind to achieve my goals, and this is something I personally looked at and will be taken into account as I plan my life. The fifth thing is seeing and hearing everything really isn't beneficial. This one is a tough for me as well because I want to know everything. I've always said that the one superpower I would want is to be able to read minds, which is a dangerous ask. But to become less angry, you should ask fewer questions. Inform yourself of what you need to know, because the more you investigate, the more you become the source of your own turmoil. So I'm not saying to not be informed, but only inform yourself of the need and not the want. And one of the last pieces that I got was to inspire others. Just like we must watch the company we keep, we must also be exemplary of what that looks like. Not allowing anger to take control, right? And it isn't easy to do. While everything else in the world is angry, it's easy to just succumb to that emotion. And very often we may attack others. And while attacking someone physically crosses a line, we should also understand that the same impact can happen if we attack someone verbally with our words, whether it's intentional or not. And sometimes we may not recognize how we're coming off. how we're actually perceived. So it's important to self-reflect constantly so that we can go out in the world and present our very best selves. I can make all kinds of suggestions on how to act, but people trust you more when you're actually living the life as opposed to speaking on something you yourself haven't experienced. So as you're acting exemplary, people will trust you and therefore be inspired by you. And don't be afraid to ask others how they perceive you, because your brain is only your brain and you must receive advice from outside of your own perception. So how would I have handled it differently? I'm not in Will's shoes, so I can't say with full certainty. I would hope that I would not assault someone. That's the first thing. But it seems like Will wanted to do something publicly to protect his wife. I would have walked up stage, gotten a little close to Chris Rock as friends and be like, yo, my man, friend to friend, I'll block his mic before I say this too, but I'd be like, my man, friend to friend, I'm gonna need you to apologize. She's going through some things and I know it was a joke, but I'm gonna need you to just apologize and refrain from saying any other joke. That right there shows that you're thinking logically and you're thinking not with your anger. Or you could have waited for him behind, backstage and confronted him there and said the same thing, where it's just like, yo, my man, I just need you to understand something. So, and that's it. And that's how it stops. That's where it could stop and that's where it could end. A third option is to not go to the Oscars, period. I get he was gonna win, but you gotta understand that as a celebrity, you must understand that you'll be ridiculed and scrutinized. And an argument can be made that it shouldn't be, but that's the reality. And if your body gets so sensitive to the point that you're not gonna be able to take a joke that people will forget about in mere hours, it might be important to not show up. I don't know, those are my thoughts, but what do you think? That's, I wanna hear your thoughts, and I hope you learned something from this book in terms of anger management. I encourage you to read it if you haven't already. If you have, let me know your thoughts on the book as well. I'm saddened that Will did this, and a lot of people have lost respect for him and all that stuff, but it is what it is, and I think, he's dealing with some internal things and that he'll learn from it, okay? Thank you so much for watching this video, and I really enjoy doing this. I really enjoy, creating talking points and reading these books and kind of figuring out how we can better ourselves just on a daily basis as we are working towards our own successes. That is it for me. Please subscribe and like the video. As always, trust your ideas and execute.